Good afternoon. Welcome to Sports Nothing But Sports with Kent Sterling for Tuesday, November 5th, 2019. Brought to you by the great people at Today's Dentistry. Dr. Mike O'Neill, the best dentist that there is, the best dentist that there ever was. Call him, make him your dentist. I did it 25 years ago. I'm never going back to any other dentist. Give him a call. Again, 317-849-2933. College basketball gears up tonight. You've got Indiana and Western Illinois at 7 o'clock at Simon Scott Assembly Hall. Tomorrow night, you've got Purdue and Green Bay. You've also got Butler hosting IUPUI. Let's talk about college basketball. Those three programs specifically with the great Dustin Dopirak from The Athletic. I love The Athletic. Dustin does a great job. All right, Dustin, what are we going to see tomorrow night? Butler opening up against IUPUI. What do you think LaValle Jordan wants to see?
Well, I mean, he sounds like he's okay with what he's seen defensively. Obviously, he's got to see some turnovers cut down. I'm just very fascinated by what they've done so far from a combination standpoint, from who they've decided to play, how they've decided to play them. It's a little bit different than what I was expecting. I mean, I saw the first exhibition. I didn't see the, was at Purdue for the second one, but just seeing the lineups they put out there, who got to play minutes and who didn't. It's very intriguing in terms of what's working and what's not. Obviously, you've seen Sean McDermott go off in these first couple of games. You've barely seen Jordan Tucker play. I wasn't sure how that was going to shake out. They've been able to play bigger. I think that's certainly helped. They've been able to throw Bryce Enzi in there, and he's been able to do a lot. I think Christian David has made this a much more versatile team as well, as a guy who can defend some bigger bodies as well as a four, really more fits that position and what it's become a little bit better than Sean McDermott did. McDermott will, I think, admit that playing forward was a little bit much to him. So I think it's still, I think what he's still looking for is what are the combinations that fit. How is this team going to play? What's going to be the best way to win basketball games? Again, I think it seems like he's happy with ball movement so far. It seems like he's happy with defense so far. It seems like he likes the intensity. He'd like to see turnovers cut down a little bit, but I think a lot of it is just continuing to figure out what is kind of sort of an identity for this team, who fits together where.
You know, you mentioned Jordan Tucker, and as you watch Jordan Tucker, he's an outlier. And I always thought he was an outlier just because he's incredibly athletic. He's the kind of kid who normally doesn't come to Butler. Sure. Does he fit here? Does he make this team better, or is he an ill-fitting part?
He can. I mean, I don't want to go so far as to say he's an ill-fitting part. I mean, he's an interesting piece of this puzzle. I mean, I think right now, he's not playing, I think, partially because Sean McDermott's just playing so incredibly well, and also McDermott fits the three. I mean, putting them both out there together is an interesting combination. They might still be two of your best five players, but it's sort of weird to try to fit them together now, because it's almost like you might be best off putting one of them the two if you're going to play them together. That means you got to take either Thompson or Baldwin off the floor, and in that case, are you a better all-around team? In that case, that's an interesting question, because I mean, Baldwin and Thompson are so good defensively up front on the perimeter. When you're moving either McDermott or Tucker out to guard a two, are you better off? It depends on who the two is, basically in a lot of cases. Because I mean, again, Thompson and Baldwin are just such good at guarding guards. Tucker and McDermott are fine at guarding wings, but if you're moving one of those wings out to guard a two, are you any better off? I don't want to go so far as to say Tucker's ill-fitting, because I do think there's a lot of things that he can do well. There's still things that he can do that Sean McDermott can't. Tucker is a better raw athlete. Tucker is a really good raw athlete. I think he's at least getting to the point where he can make a layup now. That goes a long way. I mean, he's starting to be able to finish. You need to see more from him defensively. I think that's probably just the biggest thing with Tucker, is if he shows that not only does he care about defensively, but he's good defensively, that can go a long way, because he's got the tools, he's got the talent. He's so quick, he's so fast, he's got just a lot of ability, athleticism. He just hasn't put it all together yet on the defensive end. He showed that he can care. Definitely rebounds really well on the defensive end. But he's just still not great at keeping guys in front of him. And he's got to be better at that, because he's got the physical tools to do it. But there's got to be a mindset, and it's got to go past a mindset. He's got to be able to strategically understand what he's trying to take away from guys. And I don't think you see that yet.
This is a vibe thing. But in the previous 2 years with LaValle, I felt like he was coaching Holtmann's team. And this year it seems like he's coaching his team. You think there's some accuracy in that?
To some extent. I mean, I wasn't there for the first year, obviously, so obviously that is a completely put-together Holtmann team. I can't imagine remember how many freshmen were on that team, but ultimately, that was, Chris Holtmann's guys and just continuing, which, again, you still got to make him win the games. So that's not to suggest that he didn't do anything coaching-wise. I don't think that's fair to say. But last year's team was something in between because it was just incomplete. Yeah. I mean, that's the best way of putting it. It wasn't Laval's team. It wasn't Holtmann's team. It was an incomplete collection of players. There were things they just flat out did not have. They had no answer when you had a four guy who could beat you inside and out, or even a 5 guy that could take you outside. I mean, they could not guard Juwan Morgan last year. Had no answer at all. And that was the case in several situations. If you had a 4 guy who could take you outside and also beat you inside, they didn't have anybody for you because, I mean, you were banking on the idea that McDermott was going to be able to beat you on the 3. But ultimately there were just too many days where they weren't able to just outshoot people. They were just teams they could not match up against. And this year they can. So, this year you can look at it and say, okay, this is at least a completely constructed team that has answers for anything that you want to throw at them. If you want to play big, they can. If you want to play smaller, they can. They can shift lineups around and make a lot of stuff work. They can adapt to whoever they're playing. Where last year they could not adapt to who they were playing. They had a couple different styles that they could play on their own, and that was it. There wasn't anybody who really fit as an athletic 4-man who could step out and defend on the perimeter and also defend the post. They couldn't do both. So,
and then offensively, the bigs you had with Fowler and Brunk, they were not bulk scorers. They were never going to score a bunch of points. So I think that they were relatively easy to defend.
Yeah, in that case, I mean, Nate Fowler could beat you out on a pick and pop, and Joey Brunk could do some things athletically, could get some things done in the paint. But yeah, no, ultimately, you could guard them and figure them out. You weren't going to get killed in the paint, and it's like as long as you had enough guys that could run around the perimeter, then you can get some things done. And on top of that, you have a point guard who doesn't shoot in Aaron Thompson. Aaron Thompson does a lot of things well, but shooting the basketball at this point still isn't one of them. I mean, he managed to hit a couple last year and hit a couple jump shots. He's making improvements in that regard, but again, you're not necessarily defending a point guard, out all the way in the perimeter. You're going under him on ball screens, which takes away a lot of what you're able to do. So yeah, if you were able to key on Kamar Baldwin and just make sure you weren't leaving Tucker or McDermott or Jorgensen too much, you could defend Butler pretty well. It wasn't that difficult. And again, the 5 guys weren't killing you. Brunk was doing enough. Again, Fowler could hit you on a pick and pop, and that was something. So you didn't want to dismiss that entirely. But they weren't going to crush you. Those guys weren't going off for 20 if you didn't have an answer for them. Unless
Jorgensen got hot. And Jorgensen could get streaky, and if he got hot, he could beat anybody. Right. What do you think the ceiling for this thing is for the Bulldogs this year?
I find myself being way higher on this team than most people, I think. And it's starting to worry me because I'm like, okay, what am I missing? And I think part of it is that I think the Big East is good. And I think that's what I've sort of noticed is sort of looking into it. Because we did a Big East, roundtable discussion sort of thing on The Athletic recently. And then it came down to, okay, who makes the tournament? And I have been saying Butler's going to make the tournament all year, but then you kind of look at, all right, who you leaving off? And it's like, okay, can you make an argument that there could be 7-8 Big East teams in this tournament? You can make that argument, because like, okay, you're definitely sending Villanova, Marquette, Seton Hall, no doubt. Xavier, pretty much no doubt. I like Georgetown a lot. I like Providence a lot. Mm-hmm. I think Creighton's still good. They still got Tyshawn Alexander. Like, there's a lot of players in the league, and it's like, okay, like what? So that puts it down to Butler's got to win some non-conference games because it's not going to be easy to finish top 5, top 6 in this league. Big East is going to be really solid again. It's going to be really even. It's going to be tough to win games, and it was really even last year. I don't think Butler was horrible last year, especially for as undermanned as they seem to be. For, like we said before, just not being able to adapt in certain ways. But I mean, I think this is a tournament team. I don't think it is ultimately going to be there with the Butlers, or not the Butlers, the Villanovas and the Seton Halls. I think Seton Hall is going to be really good. I think Villanova's going to be really good. I think Marcus Howard is going to be able to carry them pretty far just by virtue of being Marcus Howard. So they're going to be there. I think that Xavier team is going to be really good. Butler's probably coming in after that, but there's several other teams that are right there in that discussion. Even DePaul's not horrible. So that's the tough part. Butler's probably going to have to win a bunch of close games. They're going to have to go out and win some of the road games that they didn't win last year. There's also a floor that's pretty low. Again, I think they can be a pretty good team and still end up not finishing that way just because I think the league is going to be really tough. But I think they're top half. I don't know. It's close.
Yeah,
it's close. I think they're there. But I've sort of found myself being like sort of on the Butler train. You're like, people tell me like, hey, you might want to calm down a little bit on this. Have you seen what the league looks like? So, yeah.
When everybody says calm down, you double down. This is the way it works.
I tend not to do that because if I'm too far on the limb, that means I'm probably wrong. It's usually the way usually the way it comes down. So.
The Big East, best at the bottom. Like they should put that underneath the logo. It's the best at the bottom. Let's talk about Indiana for a minute. Indiana tonight against Western Illinois. They kind of are in a position with the schedule that they play in November. They sort of have to run the table in November, don't they?
Oh, they better. Yeah, no, if they lose one game in November, that looks really bad. Because and it makes sense for why they scheduled the way they scheduled, because you go from no big league teams in November to all big league teams in December. I don't know that I've seen a schedule like this, but it's just worked out that way based on the events that they're in between the ACC Big Ten Challenge and the Jimmy V and the Crossroads. And then having 2 Big Ten games in December, it basically just came down to, well, there's your whole month. You shouldn't extend yourself. So you better take an easy November just to lead yourself into that. So yeah, no, I think they're going to have to. If they lose one of those games, that looks really bad. But it's not to say it can't happen. I think you're very interested to see how this team comes together. It's still shaken up. They're still, they're not going to be with Devontae Green early on, so they're going to have to, figure out how they're going to play to start and then change the little ways to incorporate him back in there, because obviously he's going to want a lot of shots, and that's going to be kind of the point of it is, making sure that he's, one of the key focal points of that offense. And, there's a lot of still moving parts with that group, and so I think it's going to take a while, but I think, I hear Archie Miller saying a lot of the same things he said last year. It's a different team without Romeo Langford and Juwan Morgan, but he's still saying the same things, which was, we're not going to shoot a ton of threes. We're going to have to get the ball inside. We're going to have to get fouled, and that's where we're going to get a lot of our offense, and then we're going to have to play really good defense. That's what you've heard Archie Miller say. This offseason was a lot of the same things I felt like I heard him say, this at the beginning of last season. I think they are different now. I think I'm really impressed by what I've seen by Chase Jackson-Davis. I don't know how many minutes they're going to get every night from Jerome Hunter, but he can certainly do a lot of things. So far, see a better version of Justin Smith. We'll see if that holds up. And, seen a lot of other good pieces. I've been impressed with what I've seen from Armand Franklin so far. He was thrown into it the other night, had to play point guard in the exhibition, hadn't been doing that all offseason. Acquitted himself fairly well in that situation. I think they're fine at the 5 with Deron Davis and Joey Brunk. They've got a lot of pieces that work, that look good right now. It's going to be a while before if they're any good, but certainly if they can't beat some of the teams, they're going to have a height advantage, a size advantage, a length advantage against the teams they're going to play in this stretch. So they've got to prove they could take advantage of that. As long as they do that, they shouldn't have any problem, because they're going to have a big size advantage. That's what they've got, is a lot of length. They're going to be able to go, 6'4" to 6'7" from 2 to 5. Or to 6'10", 6'11" from 2 to 5, but it's 6'4" to 6'8". 6'9" from 2 to 4, and that's going to be tough to get the ball inside against them, tough to move the ball against them. They're going to have a lot of length. That should be able to overwhelm some of the teams that are going to be able to play in November, and if it doesn't, they got a problem.
Justin Smith is to Indiana as Jordan Tucker is to Butler.
No, because Jordan Tucker can shoot. There's something to say about that. And not that Justin Smith can shoot. They're fascinating. God, they're fascinating guys. And they've been 2 of my favorite stories to write, honestly, from talking to both of them, because they're just super intelligent. And they're intelligent in I don't say they're intelligent in different ways, but the conversations with them are very different. Justin's fascinating because how smart he is. He's an academic all Big Ten kid. And I got to talk to his mom, and he's just into inventing things. He's an entrepreneurship and corporate innovation major. And I never heard of that specific major before, but he's in Kelly.
Indiana.
He's in Kelly, and it's a real deal.
Basketball.
No, exactly. But, Kelly School of Business, big deal nationwide. And it was just funny to talk to him because, Jordan Tucker is very practiced because his dad was in the recording industry, agent, all this kind of stuff. He knows the media game very well. Justin doesn't necessarily, but he's smart in his own way because he just really takes his time to answer a question. And he really sits back and thinks about it. He says, okay, and like plots, and so that actually shows you sort of like the way his mind works on the court. Because the story I wrote about him leads with this scene in Illinois where he makes a mistake, goes and plays the offensive possession, comes back down the wing, and then sees Archie Miller and starts explaining to Archie why he made a mistake on defense. And I've never seen anything like that in my whole life. He just needed to explain why he went under a screen. Like, felt like he had a reason to do it. And he needed to tell somebody why, so he didn't feel like an idiot anymore. Like he had a reason in his head, and he needed to tell somebody. And he's got this fascinating mindset. And Tucker's got this fascinating mindset, but they're both different. And they are in the sense of, in the sense that if they hit their ceiling, that makes both teams a lot better. So They're true that way. So your analogy, I think, is what you were getting at is correct. But it's just like, I just looked at them as so much different players, and it's because Jordan can shoot it. Like, I think Jordan has an ability to be, I think, a more complete basketball player because I think all the pieces are there. Where Justin, I think it's more sort of understanding what's not there and learning to play away from it. Jordan's got to be able to make a layup. It has to be. It's there. Like he has to be able to finish that, and he has to be able to turn himself into a good defensive player. I think Justin is more like understanding he's really good on defense, understanding he's a really good rebounder, figuring out how to be a good enough shooter and pick his spots that way. Don't try to do too much on the dribble drive. Be smart when you've got the basketball in your hand. Don't put yourself in tricky positions. Jordan's got to get better in tricky positions because it's there. Like the handle, like his handle just naturally is so much better than Justin's. Yeah. So much better. And athleticism is so much better. It's just weird he gets in the paint and seems to freak out, but it's just like, you've got it. Like the handles are fine. You just watch him like dribble a basketball, like he has it better than Justin has it. But the analogy in the sense of them hitting their ceiling is true. That if they both hit their ceiling, the team becomes that much better. So that analogy is right.
And I feel like that both are smart, really, really smart, and so smart that maybe they think, you know what, it's basketball, for God's sake. My life is going to be more important than a leather ball going through a hoop ultimately. And I think these guys have that internal debate constantly.
There's something to that for both of them. I think it's more true for Justin. I think it's more true for Justin because he has totally out of this realm ideas. Like Justin, when Justin gets out of basketball, like he is going to do something that's not connected to basketball at all. Like Jordan gets the game, and I would not be surprised if he has a sports connection to his sort of life.
He's going to be an agent. Something
like that. Yeah, he could be an agent. He could be something along those lines. Like he gets the game. Like there is, like Jordan has this sort of enlightened self-interest to himself. Yeah. That's fascinating. Just because, like he gets team and he understands that you're supposed to be a good teammate, but he also understands he has an intrinsic understanding of understanding what's in it for him, and it's not necessarily selfish. He doesn't come off that way. I mean, I don't know if he comes off that way at practice within the team, but the way he talks, like he doesn't come off as a selfish guy, but he understands his self-interest. He is very in tune with what is best for him. Where Justin, I don't know, is necessarily that way. Like he does, I think, know that if he wants to be an NBA player, he has to show certain things off. But again, like his sort of like long-term goal, I think, is to make the world better.
Yeah.
I think he sees ways. Like one thing his mother taught him was that if you want to be rich, invent something that solves a problem, and he looks at it that way. Like he looks at, okay, what are problems that I can fix? Like how do I make life easier for other people? And the world in general, and then doing that, how can I make myself rich by doing it?
Right.
But he looks at the world more that way. Where Jordan has this understanding of, okay, how do I make myself the best basketball player I can be to make myself an NBA player? And sometimes that doesn't always jive with the team, and he understands he's got to be better at that. I think he does understand that in order to be an NBA player with what he is, he can't not be a team guy because he's not good enough to be a superstar at the next level. So he has to be a team guy. But he does have this very self-interested, okay, like, here's how the game works. How do I make the best for myself? Like again, it's not selfishness. It sounds selfish when I say it that way. It's not necessarily, but he does have a very good understanding of, how do I turn this situation the best I can make it for myself.
And that I'm not being critical of either guy. They're just interesting in the way, and they're not aloof, and they're not isolated. They're not iconoclasts. They're really interesting. But I think you're right. I think Justin Smith's best work is going to be done after he puts the ball away. Indiana, what's their ceiling?
I mean, their ceiling is a tournament team. I don't see them putting it all together and being a top 5 team in that league. But, I mean, I think the Big Ten now, I think, can count on 7, 8, 9 teams in the Big Ten. And I think they can be in that 7, 8, 9 range. I mean, maybe all things can come together. Maybe you see Devontae Green go off. Maybe he turns into a legit big-time scorer. Trace Jackson Davis is, second team all Big Ten as a freshman. Justin Smith puts it together enough. Rob Finnessy's got to get healthy. That's really key, or at least figure out a way, because the way Archie Miller is talking, it sounds like this is a thing that's not going to go away. That this is going to be a nagging thing, that he's going to be in pain every night with this lower abdominal thing. I mean, he was able to go play with it, but it just sounds like he's going to hurt, like he's going to play this season hurt. But he's going to, if he can find a way to still play 20, 25 minutes a night, be effective, be smart, run the offense, get it all together, and you get enough out of those 5 guys. And Jerome Hunter, if Jerome Hunter can give you 20 minutes a night, as opposed to 15, you get an extra 5, maybe get him to 25, and show everything that he's capable of, which I think is a lot. They might be able to piece a lot together. I think Hunter's going to be a matchup problem because he can do a lot of things with the basketball, shoot it well. He's so long. He's got the ability to score in a bunch of different ways. And I think one thing I saw from him that I thought was interesting, and one play shouldn't, turn the lights on that much, but I mean, he backed a guy up to about the elbow free throw line and hit a turnaround jumper. It's just like you don't see that a lot in today's game. It's either threes or layups, more than likely. But he can beat you in some different ways. He can put his back to the basket from the perimeter, push you back a couple feet, and then hit that turnaround. And there's something to be said for that. Just the different ways he can beat you. He can handle the ball on the perimeter, take you on the block from there. He can out-muscle you. He can out-length you. He can shoot it really well. He's just got a really interesting skill set, and I'm very intrigued as to how that's going to play out long-term in terms of what kind of player he's going to be. But I think if he hits his ceiling, if you get the most out of him, that makes Indiana a much tougher out.
Why is Indiana going to finish behind Purdue? Everybody picks Indiana behind Purdue. Is that his history? Is that Eastern's going to develop? What is it?
It's history. It's those guys just have it rolling.
Yeah.
They just have it rolling. Like there's a confidence over there that you don't. I mean, you walk over there just to go to a media scrum or whatever, and you talk to those guys, and then you walk around to Butler and Indiana. Because the level of confidence over there is so high, and it doesn't matter. They just lost one of the best scorers in the history of the school. They know what they're doing. They're really smart. They're going to find a way. And they just have that feeling about them, I think, that they just believe they're going to find a way. But they're going to they are also going to develop. I mean, Aaron Wheeler looks really good right now. I mean, I think what's tough is I think Matt Painter is starting to acknowledge the fact that they're not going to be able to play Williams and Harms on the floor at the same time as much. I mean, I think as of when I talked to him in July, I think that was something he was really pushing for and was really thinking, like, maybe we could make this happen. And he just doesn't quite see it right now. I think part of it is recognizing that Travion Williams can't get a lot smaller than he is. That ultimately there's an advantage there and an edge there that if you try to get him to really slender up and, like, I don't know, not eat for a month and take him down to 220 and try to make him a real stretch 4, you've lost something.
Right.
Ultimately, that body is meant to be, wide hips, throw people around. So he has to get to the point where he can run up and down the floor, and you don't have to take him off after 15 minutes. But he's getting there. I mean, I think he's right there. He ran a 5:39 mile this summer, which I still think is wild. I think it's crazy. Yeah. He ran a 5:39 mile at 275 pounds.
I'd like to see that.
There's video of the end of it. Purdue still has it on their site, so you can see him finishing up. It doesn't look like he just ran a 5:39 mile. It looks like it took him a lot longer than it did. But, I mean, they told, that's verified by everybody, unless that's a team-wide lie, which I would be really surprised if it was. Travion was really proud of himself afterwards. We talked about that. That's something that really meant a lot to him. So the endurance is there. It's getting there at least. I mean, he's still, he still does get winded, but he can push through it. And again, if a big guy that big can push through a 5:39 mile, that's saying something.
Yeah.
Like a lot of guys who run distance their whole life, 5:39 is tough to get. once you get to a certain point. So like that tells you something about the stamina he's going to have. But he's got to be. You can't take away from them just the ability for him to be wide in the lane and block people out and throw people around and rebound. Because ultimately, the best thing you can do is rebound. So trying to make him to go play the 4 ain't going to work. You can put Harms at the 4, but that takes him away from the rim. You need to have him at the rim. And I don't think they necessarily have a great feel. I think them being on the floor at the same time takes some other things they do away offensively. So it changes them as a team ultimately. Maybe their ceiling is higher if they could find a way to put that together. But even without them, you got 2, frankly, all Big Ten caliber 5 men that you're going to be able to put out there. Wheeler is starting to get that look to him.
Really?
I think so. As being, it's, again, it's early, but like things he can do to create his own shot now. Even just, doing kind of a crossover dribble or something like that, pull back, fade away a little bit and hit a 3. You're starting to see that. Like he's starting to seem like a guy that wants the ball in his hands, when the clock's going down. He's starting to show that. And they need to develop a guy that can do that eventually, because, Edwards was so good at it. Like that if nothing else was there, Edwards could pull up from 35 feet if he wanted to. Or he could break you down. Like, Edwards, the thing people forget about how good he was is how fast he was with the basketball. Yeah. You turn up, set a ball screen, high ball screen in the middle for him and get him going downhill. So fast. So it's like, so they don't have anybody like that. And it's not only, the big issue that they don't have right now, that they haven't proven right now, is the guy that can really break you down off the dribble. Proctor can do it a little bit. Eric Hunter can do it a little bit. Isaiah Thompson can do it from time to time. I think Eastern can do it from time to time. The issue Eastern's going to have is the guys are going to give him a cushion. Guys are going to go under screens on him because they're not going to be afraid of the 3. But he can still do that a little bit. But they've got shooters. Wheeler can shoot it. Stefanovic can shoot it. Hunter can shoot it a little bit. God, they got more guys I'm forgetting. I think some of the freshmen, Newman, didn't see a ton of it from him, but he can. Newman's not as far along as I thought he was going to be at this point. But he's going to be able to do stuff. I think he's going to get it together. Eventually you're going to see him, pick it up a little bit. Evan Boudreaux, I think, is finding a new role and looking pretty good at it, really being Wheeler's backup at the 4, which allows him to step out a little bit more, make that more of a part of his game, do some more pick and pop stuff.
And he fills that role of the big white guy losing his hair. And Purdue's always got to have a guy like that.
Purdue has to have that over time, the Brian Cardinals of the world and everything else. Like, Boudreaux looks 40. It's hilarious. And he knows it, too. He gets it. I had this joke with Jim Reamer. I wasn't sure if Boudreaux has old man game or if he just looks old, And he's like, no, he's got both. I'm like, okay, all right, I get it. So yeah, no, you're seeing that. He is the classic Purdue guy. But I think he is going to do a lot of things well. He just didn't have a place once Travion got effective last year. There really wasn't a place to put him. They were in good shape at the 4 with Eifert and Wheeler. Didn't really need to throw anybody else into that rotation, and didn't really need to throw anybody else besides Travion and Harms to the 5. And Harms was playing so well that you really didn't need to take him off much. And 10 or 15 that Williams was getting was enough to get you through a game. So what do you need Evan Boudreaux for? I think you do need Boudreaux to play the 4. It's going to take maybe a little bit of time for Mason Gillis to figure out where he fits. I have to think he's going to play. They're talking about redshirting, but that's 2 full years without a meaningful basketball game for Mason Gillis because he missed all last year at Newcastle, with the knee. So I think he really needs to play. I just think he really needs to play. But I think he serves a purpose. But I think they're going to defend really well because you're going to have Eastern and Harms, and that gives you, I think, the best on-ball defender in the Big Ten and the best, rim protector in the Big Ten. That goes a long way. I don't think they're going to have to score a ton of points. They're just so in sync. And again, they're not perfect right now, but they get it. They're just, the culture over there is really, really good. Not the culture at Butler, Indiana is bad. I'm not saying that at all. I think Butler's got a really good culture, and Indiana is starting to figure it out. But Purdue's just a bunch of guys who have won, and they're going to have to win a different way than they have. And again, obviously, Edwards and Klein were massive pieces of that, and even Grady Eifert was a huge piece of that. But these guys just get it. They trust each other. They like each other. They have, absolutely look up to Matt Painter as much as you possibly could. They just view him as, all right, Paint's going to figure it out. He's a genius. He's going to find a way. And they all view him that way. And, again, the way they relate to each other, you could just tell that you're around a program that wins, and that gets it So again, I don't say that to disparage Butler and Indiana because I think both of those programs are going to make big strides. But like Purdue just has a sense they figured it out. Again, I think they'll finish fourth in the league because I think there's more talent on Michigan State, Maryland, and Ohio State. I do, and I think all of that's going to be a little bit too much for Purdue to be able to get past that. But I think Purdue is in that Wisconsin during the Bo Ryan era realm that no matter what they lose, they're going to be there because they just trust each other. They're going to figure it out. I think that's where.
How's everything going at the Athletic?
Really good.
Yeah.
Really good. Yeah, no, I mean, I still feel like I'm the last guy that made the All-Star team. I mean, it's amazing the amount of talent that we're around, and you see that we're really expanding worldwide now into Premier League soccer, and really made a push over that. I'm always nervous about what I'm supposed to say, what I'm not supposed to say about how the company is doing. Because these guys are so very serious about how they're building this thing, and they're very deliberate about how they're building this thing. But you see, it just keeps getting bigger. We got. It's a ridiculous amount of talent we got. It's insane. It's crazy. The guys we got covering baseball, covering NBA, like everything. But I mean, just the basketball team. I'm just astounded by. First off, what other great sites and everything else have given away for us to take, for us to be able to have Dana O'Neill and Brian Hamilton and Seth Davis and, Brendan Quinn is a freaking superstar and, on the rise. Eamon Brennan, all of those guys. I mean, they're all just so good. Dana O'Neill's got a really good piece this week. She went to go see R.J. Hampton in New Zealand, did terrific work on that.
Oh, I saw that.
Really, really good. Brian Hamilton's done some really good stuff. He's been all over the country, did an Isaiah Stewart piece that's terrific. Quinn's stuff is always amazing. Eamon's done some really good stuff. Seth has done some really good pieces this month. It's just like, wow. Just feel like we're just loaded.
The thing that I think is really, really cool about The Athletic, other than the work, which is superb and well worth my money, it's the only thing I subscribe to, period. The comments. Because people they're affluent enough to be able to afford the subscription, or they care enough that they want to subscribe. Whatever it is, the comments to the pieces are really engaging and worth reading and worth responding to.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is, I think a big part of it is the product we're selling. I mean, basically, it's like, okay, like what. It's like to describe it, you have to want to read. You have to decide that you want to read a lot, and it's not going to be quick bursts of stuff. You're going to have to involve yourself. You're going to have to immerse yourself in what you're reading. So there's a couple different, I think, other things that lead to that. One, we end up doing a lot of feature stories that end up being generally positive for whoever we're writing about. And so that ends up being a lot of stuff on there ends up being, sort of more positive or not. But a big part of it is just you have to be the sort of fan that wants to be immersed in something, and wants to dive in deep to something, and then like you said, like have some comments that are going to, do that. And I don't want it to make it sound like we were this sort of elitist publication, because we're not, because I think we do.
But it's not clickbait.
It's not clickbait, so it's not just getting you on there to fight. It's not just looking for ways of creating conflict between fan bases or anything like that. It's delving into what we cover. And you'll have some back and forth, and I think there's what the most sort of negative comments I think we get at this point is people that wish we covered their program more. I think is a lot of it of saying like, okay, why don't you guys do this? Why don't you guys do that? Why do they deserve, especially at the college level where we don't cover absolutely everybody, why do they deserve a beat writer and we don't, sort of thing, which is sort of interesting. But no, I mean, it's very respectful. I think, and a big piece of it too, I think is, because we are I think getting on a sports-only site that's not also devoted to recruiting, which recruiting just ends up being a very conflicting, a very creates a lot of conflict. Just happens to be among fan bases because they're always like, well, you need to go here because we're the best. No, we're the best. No, we're the best. Oh no, you're cheating. Like it ends up going that way. And I don't say that to disparage recruiting sites, because I think they do, in a manner of speaking, I mean, they do work for us. I mean, we absolutely stand on the shoulders of recruiting sites a lot of the time, because they had to go in there and do some of the really dirty work when it comes to covering college sports at this point. But that's just how I think the conversation ends up devolving is, no, your school sucks, no, your school sucks, no, you do this, no, you do that. It ends up going that way where we get to sort of stand above the fray in the recruiting thing, but we're also just a sports site. It's not like a newspaper where you are, not only following them for sports, but you're also following them for politics and whatever, and you end up getting into those battles, and you're a liberal rag, no, you're a conservative rag, whatever it is. We don't end up being a part of that discussion. It is separate, so you end up, it just, a lot of factors, I think, create this community. But yeah, no, it is amazing how, nice, cordial it is.
Yeah.
To be a part of, just to see the way the comments go. And again, most of them are just massively complimentary. I thank the heck out of all of our readers for doing that. And again, so many times they do sort of make a point of saying you did a good job at a story you were really involved in. So that I think really helps as a writer, is that you are going to hear that. It's weird, because it's almost like saying thanks to my fans. And it's a weird thing to say, but it does make a difference, I think, when we're writing the stuff that we're writing, to hear the feedback that people are enjoying it, and that they are putting the time into it, and that if you are putting a month into a story or 3 weeks into a story or talking to 10 people or writing 3,000 words, you're getting the feedback back that, hey, I appreciate that you guys do this. So that means something. I think it ends up making the product ultimately better, is that you end up having this positive feedback loop that, you keep hearing from the readers that this is what they want. And I think it does, but it does, I think, say something good about the overall, I guess, media landscape. I think we have, as writers, as media, I think for a long time we really underestimated the reader. For this last decade or so, we let clicks tell us what they wanted, and by clicking, they weren't necessarily telling us what they wanted. They told us that, like, we dressed that up in such a way they wanted to find out what was behind that wall, but that doesn't mean that's what they wanted to read.
Right.
And I think we started to believe that readers didn't want to read, and they do. And they do. I mean, they bought magazines for a long time and physical newspapers because they do want to read. And I think, I think this is kind of, and I hope it creates a sort of bigger movement to believe that readers want to read. They really do, and that people can be taught, and they can be taught to expect this, and that they want you to go work hard and tell them something that they didn't know before, and that they don't just want 100 words, based on a tweet or something like that. Right. That they want something more. And now, again, it's another situation of we have to stand on the shoulders. Like there are, when news bits come out, they have to be published somewhere. And then we're able to sort of take that a step further, and we obviously don't overwhelm with a total amount of posts. So like, we do sort of need newspapers and, recruiting sites and stuff like that to, like, sort of, so that this stuff is out there, and then we sort of take a big, not 10,000 feet, but sort of further out the view on some of the stuff we write. So we need some of those other sites to exist. But I think that's the general thing that we found is readers do want to read, and they want to read stuff that you put time in. And this whole idea that they don't have an attention span isn't true, that they do have an attention span.
Thank you, Dustin. I appreciate your work.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kent. Thanks.
That's the great Dustin Dopirak from The Athletic. Butler here at Hinkle Fieldhouse tomorrow night against IUPUI. Indiana's got Western Illinois tonight. Purdue plays somebody tomorrow. Who's Purdue got?
Green Bay.
Green Bay, exactly. They're going to have a tough time. Green Bay's no joke.
Green Bay's no joke, but then they got Texas on Saturday. Purdue is not taking it easy on themselves.
Perfect. We're brought to you by the great people at Today's Dentistry. Give Dr. Mike O'Neill a call, 317-849-2933. We'll talk to you tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock, Breakfast with Kent on Facebook Live, 8:15 on Periscope Live. And then, of course, Sports Nothing But Sports at 3. Join me.